Hi, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda, and this is The Pursuit of Badassery, the podcast.
This podcast is all about taking action and creating that badass business abundance and life that you want.
Where we share stories, laughs, wins, and epic fails to show you the whole picture of the entrepreneurial journey.
It's not just unicorns and rainbows, people.
Jump on and follow us through this raw and witty roller coaster,
where we get down and dirty and go behind the scenes of life and entrepreneurship.
Get on it,
get over it,
and get after it.
Hey there, I'm Lynn.
And I'm Amanda. Welcome to The Pursuit of Badassery, the podcast. We are back for the last section of our DISC assessment. The last couple of weeks, we've been diving into the DISC assessment. So if you haven't tuned into the last 3 episodes, we do recommend that you go back and listen to them because we are concluding this series on DISC with our C, or conscientiousness. And let's dive in.
Absolutely. So just a quick overview of what DISC is. If you did not listen to it yet, DISC is a behavioral style framework. It was developed back in the philosopher days, where philosophers was like, hey, these people and these groups have certain traits and they talk a certain way or act a certain way or walk a certain way. So they started to notice nuances that grouped people together. Fast forward in the early 20th century, where psychologist William Marston, I always want to say Martinson or whatever. Anyway, he explored it a bit more and put a name to it, put a theory to it, put a structure to it, a framework to it. And so then we have DISC. So DISC is split up into 4 quadrants. You have your fast pace and you're more reserved. And you have your people and you're more task oriented. And so that just kind of gives you a bit of an overview of DISC. We're a mixture of all. However, we tend to have 1 or 2 that are dominant ones. We can have 1 or 2 that are dominant ones that are baseline of the DNA of who we are. We are a mix. There's not one that's better than any of the rest. And we have our natural style, which is our go-to. It's like our DNA. And then we have our adaptive style. It's great to understand our behavioral styles, our DISC behavioral styles, because it helps us understand ourselves better. It helps us understand how we respond to challenges and actually utilize what our mama gave us to do it better. Also, how to communicate and connect with others around. It also helps with selling and navigation, teamwork, leadership, etc. Understanding ourselves and understanding other people's patterns and behaviors absolutely can help so much. It's such a tool and such an asset. So C, compliance or conscientious, some you might hear. But yes, so some attributes of the high C or the examiner.
So these are analytical, detail-oriented, systematic. They value accuracy and details and the quality and the adherence to rules and standards. They are the ones who want to know all the details about everything. They are researching not just one suitcase, but like every suitcase that ever existed in order to find the right one. And they're comparing data. This is like your data-driven people. They're very detail-oriented, very precise. They're going to want to understand details and before they make decisions. So they're not going to make decisions without having data to back it up. So they're very analytical. They're great to have on a team. I mean, my sister was a high C, and it was great because whenever I had to I want to do research on like I said, which suitcase I should buy for my carry-on, and she would go crazy. And I mean, I would get this incredible list of all the pros and cons of every single suitcase that exists in the world at this price point or this color or whatever parameters I gave her. So it's really great for that, the structure, the rules. They're excelling in those environments that have clear guidelines and expectations. Often these are introverted people. We talk about like networking events, like these people aren't even in the room. If they're in the room, they're on the outskirts, but they're probably not in the room at all. They really prefer like working individually. These are like finding the errors, finding the analytics, looking into the details, getting the manual out and actually like going through the manual. They're great to have for research team and research and development. They're so good at that job. And thank you for all of my C's who do the work of looking at all the numbers when I don't do it. So thank you.
Yeah. So again, they're going to be in the task reserved section. They like structure. They're assessors. They're pragmatic, very system oriented. Even if the system doesn't make sense to other people, it makes sense to them. They can overcomplicate because they have to get in their head so much, but they definitely can get analysis by paralysis as well, which is hard because there's just so many things. And I know we'll get more into the communication side, but another attribute of a high C or examiner is they will absolutely fixate on a word or a phrase and dive down that rabbit hole to kind of, especially in communication, like call you out or challenge you on things. But even when they're doing research on their own without anybody around, they will hyperfixate on one particular thing. Sometimes it has nothing to do with what they're reviewing or whatnot. So their style and dress. Every time I go through this, I think of this one particular workshop because I used to do this in a live setting, and this one particular individual who is a very high C, and it always makes me crack up. But high C's, again, this is no insult, will tend to be a bit more professional, a bit more proper dressed, typically. They will, if they have the phrase, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, but also in the clothing department. So they'll keep clothing forever. If it still fits, they're still going to wear it. They're the ones that in areas where it seems better, more user-friendly, we'll say. Actually, I have a friend here, or used to. They're the ones who are getting their shoes resold and not buying new ones. And they know exactly what day, if there's a warranty on it, what day it needs to go in and how soon that they'll have that back. Again, their clothes seem to be a bit dated because they don't need to buy new things. When they do buy, they typically will research. And if they find something that they like, they will buy multiple, sometimes in the same color, but sometimes in different colors. Neutral, more tonalities, we'll say. You're not going to see the really bright colors. You might see some patterns, but it might be more classic patterns. And with minimal jewelry, minimal makeup for the ladies, even for men, it's going to be more of a structured bag type of thing. Leather, again, classic, more classic kind. But yeah, they will. The reason why I think of my one girlfriend is because she was a lawyer and she was literally wearing a suit. She was in her 30s. She was literally wearing a suit that she had in college, her early years of college. So she had the suit for like 15 years, maybe longer. And yeah, she was wearing the suit that she wore in college. And she's like, oh my God, I would never have thought that, but it's true. Like, and that's okay.
Yes, these are, the challenges. I feel like you mentioned it, this sort of analysis paralysis. They struggle with perfectionism. I mean, I know everybody can. I'm a high D. We are high Ds, and we both struggle with perfectionism. But it can lead to delays and difficulty in delegating. They can become like a C can become very overly critical of themselves or others. And like you said, hyperfixating on a seemingly unimportant word or syntax or something that doesn't seem necessarily to be the overall important thing, but they will hyperfixate on things, and they tend to be a bit more risk averse. So they might resist innovation without like solid evidence or foundationals that really show the analytics that it's going to work. But, conversely, like they're consistently producing high quality work. Like they adhere to deadlines. They really believe in deadlines. They want roles that require a lot of research and planning and thoroughness. So when you're selling to a C, you want to make sure you have all the information. They're going to ask you questions, and you don't want to lie to them and just like BS your way through it. You want to come with the information, or come with them like, I don't actually know the answer to that, but let me research it and then get you the 15 handouts that you need in order to make that decision, because they are going to ask. And I know Lynn's talked about it before, that in the alarm company, there are plenty of people who, like, they are the ones who actually needed all the schematics of, like, tell me about how many volts and the different things. Like, they want to know the ins and outs of what's working and how it's working. They really want to be more logical and fact-based and have like real discussions on analytical numbers. They can sometimes appear to be more reserved, but they value really clear, concise, well-organized communication versus like anything flighty. They're not going to be as into that, because they really do want hard facts. They're much more task-oriented, but they're a little bit more reserved. So they need detailed instructions, nothing ambiguous. Like, we're not going to be ambiguity central with them. They want to have much more clear, like, precise comments, and you need to respect their time to analyze and plan. This isn't like the person that you get on a sales call and expect them to actually have an answer within 22 minutes. They're going to probably be more inclined to ask for further information, ask for more time to think about it, ask for time to research it, might go back and forth a bit more with the analytics that they need to go through in order to make a final decision. Yeah, they're not going to be the quick to make a decision without the facts behind it.
I'm sitting here cracking up because my high C is my third, and my C is being triggered right now because Amanda's jumping around different parts of it. And I'm sitting here cracking up because she went from the dress to the communication to the this to that. And I'm like, no, go in order. That's a high C. Like, that whole time I was like having a bit of hives and like going, cracking myself up, because I was like, this is like a lesson in a high C right now for me. It was cracking me up. Okay. So a couple of points I want to touch on that Amanda touched on. The perfectionism, absolutely high Ds have it, but their perfectionism comes from themselves. They don't want people to see them as imperfect. They don't want people to see them have flaws. Where high C, the perfectionism is because they know it all. They know this data, and what they believe. So it's more like knowledge base, although it is obviously attached to them, but it comes from more of a knowledge based aspect versus the high D is more from a me aspect. So just, it's interesting when you really start to understand these behavioral styles, the likeliness, but the root of that, like, common denominator, where it comes from, is kind of mind blowing. As far as, you said something else. Oh yeah. They do need time to process. I had a team member who was handling all my books and everything. And it's not just the analyzing. It's like, they can't be backed, kind of like a nurturer shouldn't be backed into a corner. Same with a high C, a high S and a high C. They need that time. It is an absolute need of theirs to be able to make sure they're dotting all their I's, crossing all their T's, that they're not missing anything, because if they miss something, that's a gap in their knowledge. That's a gap in their process. That's a gap in their understanding, which could be a blow to what they're doing. Again, pros and cons. They're extremely detail oriented. They're the problem solvers, reliable in a way of like, they're going to pull all the data. But it's funny, literally this morning, I got a message back but he's a high D and a high C. I have a scientist that I'm working with one of the companies. And I asked specific questions. He wanted to get on a call to have a discussion with the academic that I'm being the liaison of this questioning. And because he wanted to be a certain way, he actually responded to me flippantly, because he's trying to poke holes in my ability and my knowledge, because he thinks it has to do with me. And so they can do that. They can be like really like pokey if they feel like you are either trying to be smarter than them or you're not as smart as them. And it could be in a different field. So they can go down those rabbit holes, but definitely be really aloof but pokey in a way where it's like passive aggressive in a very interesting way. They have a hard time delegating. So, but same with dominance or high Ds, they have a hard time delegating. Probably the one who has the easiest time delegating would be the high I, but they don't know what to delegate. And the D would probably be the second, just because they want to be able to like streamline things once they can get past the, if you want it done right, do it yourself type of mentality. But an examiner definitely, or a high C definitely has a hard time because they don't think that anybody can do it the same way. And it has to, they're more concerned typically about the process than the outcome. They want it done exactly the way they believe 1 + 1 = 2 and nothing else can equal 2. It's very black and white.
I'm over here chuckling because it's very much my sister. So I love you. And this was you. So it's really important though to understand, again, we talk about this in each of our episodes. There's no right or wrong. There's no perfect or imperfect person. And you're all a combination of all of these things. And it's actually kind of funny because I don't have a lot of C in me. However, I was like, I absolutely will have 3 of the same shirt in the same color and the same style so that I don't ever have to buy anything because I don't like shop. And I'm like, well, this seems most practical. And I'll have it and I'll own it for 20 years. And I have the same pair of hiking shorts I've had since 2005. So, and I've patched it like 15 times because, like, these are my hiking shorts. I wear these shorts every time I go hiking on long distances.
Isn't it funny how we pull like certain things from the different behavioral styles? It's incredible. I never thought I had high examiner. I actually thought I was a high nurturer when I first heard about this. And boy, was I wrong. It was insane. I have almost no nurturer and I have some examiner. Let's go through before we close it up, like the communication style, how you communicate with a high examiner, and also where they're at in the room too, identifying where they're at in the room. So communication is, you want to be very detailed. Like Amanda said, with my alarm company, like sometimes I had to pull out the stats, the warranties, the paperwork to let them
schematics
themselves. So that way, and schematics, that way, because even if I was reading it, they can't hear me. They want to see it for their own eyes. And there's other nuances in that, but that's for another time. But be detailed, be extremely prepared. Do not make stuff up. Don't wing it, because they will be able to see through it and they're going to challenge you. Use precise, and I would say concise language. If you do not know, let them know. I am not sure about that. I will get back to you, and do that. And I would say that you need to, with communication, with emails, they're the ones who are going to be bullet pointed. You're going to have attachments with them, this, that, and that. Yeah, you want to feature, or you want to focus on quality communication, features and benefits. But you want to be clear, ask questions, and it needs to be a bit more formal. They're usually also the ones with all of the letters after their name. And that's important to them.
And it is. And I love that you said it's much more formal. It's much more data driven. So when you're communicating, it's
not emotional.
Being correct and unemotional is very important. You want to make sure that you have the specific things that are data-driven, analytical facts versus your perception of the facts. That's not going to fly with them. And they will, if they don't challenge you outright right there, they will come back at you later, be like, you were wrong about this, and challenge you then. They definitely like the real analytical numbers and data behind things.
Absolutely. Okay, Amanda already said in a networking event, typically they don't go, but they'll go with a goal in mind. They'll stay closer to the door. They tend to be more aloof, and they're only going to do what they need to do and get out. They're not staying, but this is how you kind of recognize them, is that their attire because they will typically be a bit more formal or dated. So they're the ones who are showing up like with the men. And I can remember networking events where the men had like a 3-piece suit on. Typically that's going to be an examiner. Even in Hawaii, this would happen. And this is not a stab at them. This is like, it fascinates me how accurate the DISC assessment is and how you can utilize it to communicate differently. So I love that.
Yeah, I absolutely, I mean, we've spent 4 episodes now talking about how much we love the DISC assessment. If you have never taken one, we highly recommend that you do. We have a sort of like a shortened version that's free that's you can find in our show notes. That's just scratching the surface of it. If you are interested in learning more about DISC or doing a DISC training with your team, reach out to us because we love talking DISC and training people on it and going through it. We love it. Almost inappropriately so. We just love, I think it was, I know Lynn was the one who introduced me to DISC, but it was at least a decade ago. And I've been using it since then, and I use it all the time to the point now where I don't think I could shut it off if I wanted to. So we love DISC, and we hope that you have enjoyed learning the basics of it. And if you need help on it, please reach out.
Absolutely. We do love doing trainings and team building exercises. It's a lot of fun for those on your team to understand each other as well as themselves. And it's a great team building exercise, but yes, we love DISC. Let us know your questions. Share our DISC series along with those who you feel need it. Because believe me, when I started learning, I was like, whew, now I understand why this person communicates that way, or this person does this, or this person, and I understand my needs. We both have needs. The whole point of this is that we all have our unique behavioral style blends. We all have our needs, but we can make concessions for the people that we love, but we should have that communication with them and say, hey, I understand now that this is a need of yours. This is a need of mine. Can we meet in the middle? As well as with sales and business. It's awesome. So until next time,
get after it.
All right, everyone. It's not enough to just listen.
Now you've got to put it into action.
We are so excited to see what you do next.
If you enjoyed our show, please leave us a review on iTunes.
And to find out more about what we're doing, visit us at thepursuitofbadassery.com.